So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay and to another custom scenario that I believe was made by Froggy, albeit it was sent to me by a different player, that being Langer. I think this is part of a set of 3. I've yet to receive the 3rd one because I think they want to rerun it, but regardless, this is going to be the middle of the 2 that I hope to be showing. And this one is going to be a defence by the middle and north men of Dunland and Rhudaur. I believe Rhudaur are on the defence, yes indeed they are, against a full invasion force really from the dwarves, elves and the other men of Arnor that are separate from Rhudaur. Interesting little place this as well. I don't know what settlement this is intended to be, maybe LARACH, something like that. One of the Dunlanders settlements, seeing as Imladris are marching down here. Khazad are also closer to Dunland than they are to Rhudaur, so it maybe makes a little bit more sense for them to be around. And of course Isengard themselves sending up their reinforcements from Orthanc, a little bit easier for them to get to Dunland than it is to Rhudaur, so that's the assumption that I will make here. This settlement actually puts me in mind a little bit perhaps of Gath in the way that it's laid out. You've got this tiered settlement on the side of a cliff, and the way that you get there is through these narrow valley trenches. This is a very long replay as well, probably one of the longer ones that you're going to see from my channel, 67,000 frames. So settle in. We'll go through the army compositions reasonably quickly. There will be a cut before the battle gets underway, of course, because the attacking armies are a little bit further away, so that will be happening as well. So we start off with Langer himself, who's playing as the Imladris army on the field. Plenty of quality. They're certainly going to be able to have the beating of Rhudaur and Dunland troops 1-to-1, but the Imladris army is also going to be fairly small, comparatively speaking, to those defending forces. Riders of the Bruinen, which are a pretty good unit of horse archers, you would have to say. Imladris have got that little bit of extra defence going for them. I don't know how useful horse archers are going to be in this context. Early in the battle, you would have to say, is when their mobility will be at their most useful. Later on, when the Dunlanders and the men of Rhudaur are digging into their hillside position, maybe less so. That's, however, where the Imladris sentries can be really, really good, one of the better units of pikes in the game. Eldarenway swordmasters as well will be able to tear their way through, especially the entry-level troops from the forces that they're facing off against. The Bruinen river wards will be able to do the same, albeit to a slightly lesser extent. A couple of units of Eldarenway spears, which are a really good defensive unit, as of course are the Gwythi Arthedain, the bodyguard version essentially. We've got some Norreturno warriors here. Some swords of Rivendell, so some of the lighter troops, including the archers of Rivendell. The God Heliem are back here that are hidden, and the Eldarenway archers as well. So a decent ranged force around a pretty decent but compact infantry force by Imladris' standards. Then we have Khazad, another infantry powerhouse. Wojciech is playing as them. 4th Legion Shield Guard will be really good at being that defensive bulwark on the front line as Khazad make their slow but inevitable advance. Warriors of Khazad will be backing them up as well. Plenty of bodyguard units here as well, so this is a strong Khazad infantry force. Mithril Guard, Guards of Khazad and the Legion Bodyguard, including the Sons of the Fallen here. Some Orc Hunters for some extra ranged presence, some Dwarven Miners, 2 units of Reclaimers, 3rd Legion Infantry and the Iron Watch. That's a really strong Khazad force that the defenders should be quite frightened of. Then we've got Cardolan, played by Mevin. Unsurprisingly, their infantry is not going to be quite as good as the elves and the dwarves they're fighting alongside, the Greenway units especially, but numbers-wise it will help even things out against the very numbers-heavy Dunland. We've got some Greenway garrison footmen here, we've got some Minotaur Roman gatekeepers, Dunedain captains, again a pretty strong force overall though, Warns of Tir Gorthad, Hearthguard of Amon Sul, another unit of captains here, so plenty of good, strong forces here. Minhiriath archers and crossbows, and then there's some Tharbad warhammers at the back for that armour-piercing punch. And finally, on the hillside somewhere, we have Froggy, who's got some Dunedain Rangers. He's of course playing as Arthedain. Wardens of the North, very solid faction from an infantry perspective are Arthedain, with the men-at-arms, but especially because of the pikes. The liberal use of Arthedain pikes is very common for this faction. We've got some dismounted Fornos to ride Knights, Knights of Anubis and Dunedain Peacekeepers. The Peacekeepers, really good unit, I really like them, and they should be very good against the likes of Rhudaur, especially with their lighter armour. Now, moving on to the defenders, starting off with Mr. Sneakman, who's playing as Dunland in the hills. Dunlanding veterans are a lower tier line infantry, you'd have to say, but they're decent at what they are. The problem is going to come, I think, when they have to go up against some of the higher tier units. They'll have to beat them through other means. Half-Orc Spearguard, Half-Orc Baneguard, so plenty of them, the troops on loan from Isengard as it were, and they do represent some of the tougher units that Dunland are able to field. Still in high numbers though. Half-orc Spear Guard are there. Over here, we've also got the Spears of Orthanc, which of course the main feature of them isn't the spears at all, it's the crossbows. Definitely the standout unit in the Dunland force from an infantry perspective. Half-orc Spear Guard from Imladris also playing as the Dunlanders. Half-orc Spear Guard once more. Half-orc Bane Guard, to be fair, there's only so many units that Dunland can bring. Dunlanding veterans, we've got some Half-orc Bane Guard over here. A little bit further back we've got some Standing Stones. Nothing up here for the moment. Looks like the Rhudaur force is actually much further back than the Dunlanders, starting off with WK. A couple of units of Troll Hunters, some Enslavers and some Berserkers. Got some Admiral's Troll Hunters as well. Another unit of Enslavers, another unit of Berserkers. They're going to need this kind of quality if they're going to have any hope at all. Inarius does have his Spears of Orthanc back here also. And then there was, I think it was Dabaduba, wasn't it? Yes, it was. We've got some Admiral's Troll Hunters over here. Can't go into that part of the settlement, but still it exists. And the rest of his army is conspicuous by its absence, so there's going to be plenty of units that are hidden, and there are some trees around the outside of the settlement as well. So I will make a cut and we'll rejoin when the battle is getting underway. We're not going to have to wait long at all by the looks of things, as the arrows from the elves do start opening up. The Norotino warriors are here, and the Half-orc Spear Guard getting into position. So this little pathway around is the way that Imladris are going to take. Mr. Sneakman is going to be blocking the way with several units of Half-orc Spear Guard, but the dwarves are also on their way over here. So actually, this little valley gap is going to be where Imladris and Khazad are both going to be trying to gain entry into the deeper sections of the map, which is quite interesting because this is a very narrow path to take. The red line is here, but technically speaking, like, this pathway wouldn't actually be that much larger even if the red line wasn't there. So it does make sense that this is going to be a narrow, choke-pointed kind of battle. I don't know how effective Dunland are going to be at plugging the gap with only their spears. The Half-orc Spear Guard are all well and good, but you're going to be going up against some of the cream of the Elven crop, including the mighty Gwaith the Arthedain. Swords of Rhudaur also backing them up should do quite nicely. And he did have a couple of units over here, actually, Mr. Sneakman, including some Snaga Skirmishers and Trollshore Axe Throwers, which could help to even the odds. Cardolan, meanwhile, are going to be going right through the centre, through the valley that leads into the settlement a little bit more directly. They do have plenty of numbers to withstand the casualties they are likely to take on the approach, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes for Cardolan. And then, of course, you have Arthedain, which are going to potentially be going around this way via the river. We've got WK blocking the way with some Rhudaur swordsmen for the time being, but it's going to take a little while for the Arnorians to get into a position. And actually the dwarves perhaps have been told to turn around by the elves, saying there's no need for two very high tier armies to be going this way. Cardolan are going to need your backup more than I am, because if this fight is allowed to continue in its current vein, Dunland, there's no way they're going to be able to beat Imladris in a straight-up melee brawl. They can definitely stand in the way for a decent amount of time. Half-orc Spear Guard, as most decently armoured spears are a good defensive unit, but they're not going to be able to have the beating of the elves here. This, however, is how Mr. Sneakman can potentially be quite efficient with this engagement. He's going to get his Snaga Skirmishers to come forward. Cheap javelins, always a good way to get some kills. You can see that the Elven Archers recognise the danger that even this lowly unit of Snaga poses, and they're going to immediately try and slice through them. Snaga, of course, not the best at taking arrow fire like this, so you'd have to say they're not going to last all that long, especially with the amount of Elven Archers that are currently shooting at them. Looking a little bit further down, it is pretty much all of them as well. All of the Norotino warriors and all of the Archers of Rivendell are opening up on that one unit of Snaga. The God Halim are not, so that's worthwhile. You don't want to be using your Silver Thorns this early, especially on a unit that isn't really going to be moving all that far. But yes, while it may seem like a bit of overkill this, to fire so many of your archers into the Snaga, I do think it's worthwhile because it takes away Dunland's ability to make this fight work for them. And slowly but surely you will be able to grind your way through the Half-orc Spear Guard in this manner. I think actually, is this the Elven General? Yes, it is. It's an interesting place to put the General, the Riders of the Bruinen. At any rate, Cardolan are going to be reinforced promptly by the dwarves, as prompt as the dwarves are able to be at their speeds. You could go through this hillside pathway as well, I think. Yes, indeed. you will be able to go through the mountains over here. It is a very narrow choke point once again that the Dunlanders can get in the way of, but it's perhaps a more enticing prospect than going through the valley and allowing yourself to get shot by the spears of Arthedain, as well as just going into the welcoming arms of a very similar infantry force when all is said and done. Arthedain, however, should absolutely be looking to move around this angle of the settlement, I think, because there's plenty of room that you can use over here from an Arthedain perspective. And the enemy would also have to move out more resources to meet you in combat. Half-orc Baneguard are there. Snaga skirmishers are back. That looks like another unit of them, in fact. There's still the Norotino warriors firing. I wouldn't be too worried about using the ammunition in the Norotino warriors either, because they do have some really good utility as a dual-wielding melee unit as well. So perhaps dumping all your ammunition quickly is another way to get another makeshift unit of infantry that you can use to tear your way through the rank and file of Dunland. And Isengard, technically. It's only Isengard units that have seen combat against the enemy so far. Sword of Rivendell with the armour upgrade. But it's really the Gwaith Arthedain who I don't think have taken much in the way of losses at all. They are winded though. Such is the way of things when you're slamming spears against one another. You are not going to see a quick battle, and everyone involved is going to be exhausted by the time all is said and done. Some Snaga skirmishers up on this high ground as well. Another good opportunity over here perhaps for Dunland to start using those throwing projectiles, and any projectiles really, to make life just a little bit more difficult for the attackers as they move forward. The Midhiriath spears are on the way. The elves are going to be sending their riders of the Broinen over here to help Arthedain push through. There are some defensive positions over here which are not being used because it's a little bit too far forward for the defenders to feel comfortable going out there. However, they have got some Ferodran javelins over here who are firing. They have revealed themselves. WK not having them off of fire at will, which does mean if Arthedain were paying any sort of attention, they will have noticed those Ferodran javelins were there, and they should be able to send over some substantial infantry force to deal with them. An important unit to deal with as well, because their javelins are dangerous and they are good in melee as well, especially against the likes of Arthedain. A single unit of Arthedain man-at-arms is not going to be what you want to be sending up this way. Especially not with javelins raining down on them like this. There won't be much left of them by the time they do get into melee. It is now very clear where they are. I think WK knows that now that the jig is up, he needs to use this ammunition quickly to at least get some use out of it, even if it's on the kind of unit that he won't want to be dumping high priority ammunition into. But you can see how quickly they carved through that unit of Arthedain man-at-arms there. The armour upgrade serving no purpose really against the armour piercing Ferodran javelins, and they don't have much ammo though, so they will have to get into melee, but this won't bother them too much. Those armour piercing great clubs and the second hit point will be more than enough to deal with a unit like the Arthedain man-at-arms. Even a second unit of them I don't think will be enough. I think as well they should be able to prevent being surrounded, which will help their cause pretty substantially. Meanwhile, Cardolan not in any sort of great rush to get up here onto the high ground, although perhaps they should be, because it would help to facilitate Imladris' advance as well. Mr. Sneakman would have to divide his attention, and that will be difficult for him to do, especially when you're talking about dealing with the quality of Imladris on the front line. But still, he's got some Baneguard on the front line now, which will be a little bit more effective at dealing some damage to the elves that they're facing off against here. The Broinen River wards on the front line now though, and those heavy elven swordsmen will be really effective against the half-orcs. They may not have the armour piercing, but they do have the base damage, and they do have a good amount of melee defense as well to counteract the damage that may be coming their way from the Baneguard. Imladris sentries potentially going to push forward onto the front line. It will be really difficult for the half-orcs to do anything if the elven pikes get dug in. Gwaith Arthedain have taken a few losses now that there is actually a unit of armour-piercing infantry on the front line, and they have been fighting for quite some time, so fatigue and attrition will be starting to set in. Another unit of Snaga skirmishers heading this way. And once again, the elven archers are there to give them a response. Mr. Sneakman won't mind too much that so much of the elven ammunition is being dumped into basic Snaga. It bodes well for Rhudaur later on, with stuff like that, berserkers and troll hunters, if there's no archers left to be dealing with such things. Another unit of Baneguard to try and plug the gap for as long as possible. Meanwhile, Reforged Javelins continuing to fight. I don't know if there's anything else up here. There could very well be. Rhudaur have got plenty of units that can hide anywhere. But yeah, it's down to pure numbers this. Individually, the Reforged Javelins will do quite nicely against the Arthedain Man-at-Arms, but with more and more units arriving on the front line, Arthedain are going to overwhelm this unit. But they managed to kill off basically an entire unit of Arthedain Man-at-Arms, plus a bit more. Is that really worth it? Probably not. Reforged Javelins are an important unit, although here we can see WK is going to get in from behind as well. Arthedain not sending forward a unit to cover them from behind. Dunland Hunters from Duba also revealing themselves, so these positions actually do have a little bit of infantry on them. Dunland Hunters are a very basic unit of archers indeed, but they will give Arthedain something to think about as they move forward. There's also those Rhudaur marksmen there as well. They will have to go around to get to this defensive position, so these stakes actually do serve some sort of purpose, and WK trying to relieve those Reforged Javelins, getting those Rhudaur clansmen into the backs of the Arthedain Men-at-Arms. They won't enjoy that too much, but the Rhudaur clansmen themselves are being very quickly surrounded as well by a unit of Arthedain pikes, who in turn are probably getting shot though, so it's a very complicated engagement this. One that I don't think either side will be too disappointed with, but neither will they be too thrilled. Reforged Javelins doing a decent job now, they're getting some support however. And there's still that Rhudaur swordsman force ready to move forward should they be required. Snaga skirmishers, Mahiriath archers however have managed to find a little pathway up onto this little area. 2 units of skirmishers going at one another. And of the 2, the Mahiriath archers are definitely the stronger in melee. They've definitely got more going for them defensively than the Snaga. The Snaga trying to get up here to potentially rain some hell down upon the Mahiriath spears. They're going to try and use their fire arrows to break the Snaga perhaps. Snaga's still a little bit too healthy and around a little bit too much support for that to be completely effective. But there is a time and a place for that. I just think it's a little bit later into the engagement when you're starting to gain the upper hand. That can really help hammer things home if you can cause a rout to happen. Meanwhile, Trollshaw Axe Throwers doing their thing over here as well as the Snaga Skirmishers, so Mr. Sneakman using more of his throwing projectiles now, and rightly so. There's a lot of unshielded units on the front line, which the Axe Throwers will be really good against. And the Elves, I think they're feeling the pressure a little bit to actually start making some progress here, because they're being held up for too long and they're starting to take fairly consistent damage from all of these throwing projectiles. So Lang are going to try and push through the lines with his Eldarenway Spearman. He needs to be a little bit quicker. He needs to get these units through and into some of these Javelins and Axe Throwers, because they will fold very, very quickly under the attentions of the Eldarenway Spears in melee. The second unit coming forward, the Archers of Rhudaur, continuing to fire at the Trollshaw Axe Throwers, which is definitely the right thing to do. Definitely a very dangerous unit, and a unit of bandits as well are here, so more javelins. Interesting. I really like the spear model actually on those on the bandits. But yes, I mean this is how Dunland need to fight this. They're never going to overpower Imladris in melee, so they need to layer their defence and they need to use their javelins and throwing axes to really good effect. And they are doing a lot of damage here to those Eldarenway Spears, even though all of these javelins are on the lower end of the damage spectrum. You can see that they caused even the mighty Eldarenway to become shaken for but a moment there. But there is a shelf life on this defence, and Mr. Sneakman knows it, and he sees that the writing is on the wall and he's going to fall back to a more defensible position. A little area in here that could... I mean, there's a complicated part of the map for Mr. Sneakman to try and defend. WK is now over here as well, with some forces from Rhudaur. Bandits starting to fire down. And yeah, definitely it's worthwhile going after them in Hiriath sharpshooters, because you want to stop them from shooting so many bolts down range quickly, but they're also a pretty decent little line infantry unit in melee with those maces that they wield. Half-Orc Spear Guard giving them a bit of cover as well, so a bit of a game of cat and mouse going on here between Cardolan and their foes. Meanwhile, as we push through the trees, yeah, Rhudaur completely surrounded and cut off at this point, so Arthedain will get their victory over here, but it's come at a greater cost, I think, than they were perhaps hoping for. The archers have gone back into hiding. You can see there's dead pikes from the volleys that we saw earlier on. Imladris still have their horse archers. I do agree with the decision to bring the horse archers over here, by the way. It's the widest section of the field, so it's the only area where you really get what you want from it. as soon as Froggy's cleared up this bit of resistance that's still on this hill, I'm sure that he will start moving in and spreading out to try and deal with what defenders are hidden in the swampland. I say swamp, that's more of a, I don't know what would you call a little, I mean it's not a pond, but it's not really big enough to be a lake. Would you call it a pond? I guess you could. Yeah, this section, he'll need to spread out and make sure that he's rooted out all of the hidden Rhudaur units. Reforged Javelins will fight to the bitter end over here. Well, they're shaken, but they're going to break and fight to the death because there's nowhere really for them to retreat to. They'll get a few more kills, but yeah, they are now pretty much finished. As is this defense from Mr. Sneakman, but I think he'll be reasonably happy with how that went. He managed to kill off a good number of some strong Imladris troops, and also a lot of the elven ammunition has already been utilised on some of his lower end throwing projectiles, which means some of the higher tier ones that Rhudaur have will be safer later on. WK pulling back with Mr. Sneakman, perhaps knowing that they can't really hold on to this location from two angles, especially seeing as Imladris will have the high ground over here. They'll be able to shoot down onto the defenders, so they're not going to hang around here to be sandwiched between Imladris and Cardolan, and they are going to start to retreat, albeit some of these units up here will have to get a bit of a move on. There are the bandits. What's this? Ettenmore's Troll Hunters. I mean, this is a bit of a problem. This little cliffside position, they're no longer going to be able to really stay here because Cardolan can shoot down onto them now as well, which should be the green light, honestly, for perhaps the dwarves to start moving through this central valley along with some of these initial Cardolan infantrymen. As soon as you start putting pressure on the centre of the settlements, it's going to cause the defenders to get a little hot under the collar, I think. Just definitely start feeling the pressure. Arthedain starting to move forward. I really hope Rhudaur have got more than just a few units of light archers over here, because otherwise a large-scale advance from Froggy will very quickly cause this defence to crumble as well. And the attackers are doing pretty well for themselves at the moment. What's going on over here? Reforged Javelins trying to give themselves a little bit more room, perhaps trying to engage one unit at a time so they can get as many kills as possible. They should get a few more kills here on these men-at-arms, but there isn't many of these Reforged Javelins left, and they're all bloodied up, so no second hit point for them anymore. Much more of a basic shock infantry unit now. Arthedain's still not too keen on moving forward, and Rhudaur are still holding their ground. This is an interesting situation now, though, because more and more in this section of the field, the attackers are going to be the ones with the high ground until we get through the initial part of the settlement, and then it will flick back into the defenders having the high ground once again. So it's really up to them how they choose to approach this. There's a few areas they can still take up, but the geography of the area is really quite complicated. They will need to take that into account before they really start to pick their position and try and stick with it. What have we got here? A routing unit of Rhudaur clansmen. Run for it. Interesting direction in which to rout. So Froggy going to try and swing wide here and go through the trees first with most of his army, perhaps? I mean, it makes sense. There's a lot of these defensive positions which Rhudaur could hope to utilise rather than just punching right on through to the settlement itself. Unity is going to be an important factor in this, though. Here are the Magirian spears. There's a few dead Snaga. Airfork Spearguard are ready and waiting, two very similar units. But the Dunlanders do have more backup readily available. I'm not sure why Cardolan have decided to stretch themselves like that, but no matter. Bandits are in place, but again, those archers, what ammunition Lango has left could be put to really good use here, shooting down into these bandits. They are shielded, but let's be honest, elven archers are going to rip through a unit like that very, very easily. No armour upgrade for the archers of Rivendell. Just interesting little thing. they going to shoot, I wonder? It's actually best we go up to times 6 speed here, because I'm not sure. Things could kick off very, very quickly, so I don't want to make a cut per se, but... what do we have here? Are we going to start to see the advance through the trees here from Froggy? I believe we are. Okay. Well, sort of. Again, maybe a little bit overcautious for my tastes. Yes, there is the very high likelihood of an ambush in here, but you still have most of your army left available to you. Whatever's in there is going to crumble before you if you advance in a confident manner. Good, here we are. Minhiriath spears are moving in column formation into these half-orc spear guard, which isn't going to go very well for them, and indeed they're already shaken as a result of this. They are getting a little bit of support, however, from their archers just in behind. Minhiriath archers right up there on the cliffside, but the half-orc spear guard pointing the right way, armoured and shielded. So they will be able to withstand a bit of a beating. And they're going after the Snaga, those archers on the hill, which again is fair enough. They are unironically one of the more dangerous units that Dunland are able to field. And a similar story over here as well, Mr. Sneakman's bandits taking a bit of a licking from those elven archers up on the hill, which is why I'm a little bit surprised as to why this is the area they've decided to try and defend, because it is a little bit exposed. Unless it's just a rearguard action to allow a lot of those units to get back into the much better defensive position that the deeper parts of the settlement offer. Well, lots of red arrows have revealed themselves over here. Dabba Dooba has now sprung his trap, maybe a little bit too soon actually. What I would have done is allowed Arthedain to come into this area a little bit more, and then you could maybe overwhelm and surround them a little bit more. In a straight up line battle like the one that has now erupted here, Arthedain will be a little bit happier in that situation. Spear on spear violence once again. Another unit of Rhudaur clansmen perhaps moving forward to try and intercept those Evendim archers, as Arthedain now starting to use their own entry-level archers on Rhudaur, which should be fairly effective. And they're going to move backwards. I mean, there's, again, the infantry is not immediately on hand to block that. Dunedain Rangers, Riders of the Bruinen. The Rhudaur archers are going to try and do some damage to them. Interestingly enough, the Dunedain Rangers were hidden, but still taking damage because the target was the Riders of the Bruinen and they were right next to one another. So this defensive position working out quite nicely for Rhudaur for the time being, but I do worry about them in the long run. Rhudaur Axemen now moving in. Their presence on the front line will be a great help because of the armor-piercing damage added to the more defensive nature of the Rhudaur clansmen. Of course, they'll get absolutely ripped apart by any Arthedain archers, and they will immediately be the target of such pressure. That, I think, is still just one of the routing units. And then through this, again, very narrow choke point. The Minhiriath spears already gone. Bandits, Bane Guard and Spear Guard now going up against the... Well, I say that, no, there are still some Minhiriath spears in there, but they are very depleted. Greenway Garrison Spearmen are not going to be the answer for dealing with this defensive force either, so this little fight here going pretty well for the defenders so far, but definitely a bit of a token effort this from Cardolan. The Dunedain captains coming forward is going to show a little bit more intent, but I think what Cardolan's hoping for, honestly, is that the dwarves take on some of the workload. The dwarves have been resting on their laurels a little bit, but perhaps later on that will pay dividends when their really quite strong infantry force starts to come into its own. A couple against the Spear Guard, some dwarven miners heading down there. Dunland hunters here, trying to shoot at point blank and succeeding at that. Arthedain men-at-arms routing. Froggy maybe needs to get a little bit more infantry into the fray. Rhudaur swordsmen. Under normal circumstances, I'd say the Arthedain men-at-arms are the superior unit, but they are outnumbered pretty substantially here by the fighting men of Rhudaur. And there are some Rhudaur marksmen as well, firing in, completely surrounded. So even though, well, he's technically managed to achieve what I would have been going for by allowing Arthedain a little bit further into the trees, that's more because I think Arthedain don't have their infantry on hand and ready to support as much as perhaps they should. Some Dunedain Rangers shooting into the Rhudaur clansmen. evident archers pulling out their swords and trying to contribute. They do have the first level of armour upgrade, so... But again, they're not really the sort of thing that you need to be seeing here at this point. And while it's more the case with Dunland, with Rhudaur as well, the true strength of the Rhudaur army is going to come from their skirmishers, not just their archers, more so their javelins and the like. And one way of dealing with that is going to have to be, I think, a really aggressive push forwards by Arthedain to try and snuff Rhudaur out pretty quickly. So far, I think Rhudaur will be pretty pleased with how things have gone. Armoured by Rhudaur standards, the Admiral's Trollhunt's another unit that has a spear as its primary weapon. Dunland Hunters getting into another position. There's more Arthedain units back there, more pikemen that they don't want to commit forward because of the litany of archers that are on display. But I think from an attacking perspective here, it doesn't really matter how you approach things. There's going to be skirmishers that are going to be shooting you, because Rhudaur are going to have their throwing projectiles later on. They've got their archers now. Dunland have still got their bits and pieces, their crossbows, their javelins. If you're the attackers, you're going to have to accept the fact that ultimately some units that you don't want to be shot are going to get shot. Bandits are blocking the way. Miners and archers of Rivendell again. Bit of just a basic force this, but they have the high ground here, the dwarves and the elves. And they are going to continue to push back against the defenders here. Noratuno warriors perhaps getting into melee. Their presence will be much appreciated on the front line, I'm sure, but in response to that, 2 units of Half-Orc Spear Guard will once again be in the way. I'm sure Imladris at this point are sick of the sight of them. Moving back down here, there's still quite a lot of Dunlanders down here on the lower sections of the settlement. Edmore's Trollhunters, some Dunlanding veterans, which we haven't seen many veterans on the front line yet. Dunedain captains and warriors of Khazad, in addition to range support from both sides, but from a melee perspective you have to imagine the writing is surely on the wall here for the defenders. Nice position there for the Minhiriath archers, and they're getting some pretty decent hits, albeit into the front of shielded units. Rhudaur here perhaps seeing a bit of an opportunity to go on the offence themselves. WK moving forward with his 2 units of Rhudaur swordsmen. Seeing an opportunity to maybe catch out this 1 unit of Arthedain pikemen, which is over here. I think this is all Arthedain have over here, and they can surround this unit of pikes, break its formation, and then they will be in some pretty substantial trouble. It's not going very well for Arthedain over here, you'd have to say. In defence of Froggy, though, he is on his own over here, whereas Imladris and Cardolan have both had a little bit of support from the dwarves all this time. Arthedain have been pretty much alone. The only thing that Froggy has had to support him are the Riders of the Broinen, and they've not really been used at this point. But now is the opportunity to do so. They really need to get into and stop this this little Rhudaur excursion in its tracks. And using your horse archers to do so is probably the best way to bail out that unit of pikemen. There's only going to be so much use you can get out of horse archers in this situation. Arthedain need to send forward more infantry though. Evenly matched fight, but that's something the defenders will be quite happy with, I think. And you can see over here Arthedain trying ahead here. We've seen both extremes of the map. The red line has played its part. Again, it's a chaotic fight where units are surrounding one another. There's a lot of overlap happening here. Rhudaur swordsmen and clansmen, very basic by Rhudaur standards, but doing pretty decently. You'd have to imagine that would change now, though, with stuff like dismounted Fornosterine Knights and Dunedain Peacekeepers. The rank and file of Rhudaur are not going to be able to keep pace with some stronger units of Dunedain, and they're going to have to fight now. Meanwhile, way on the other side, javelins. We're starting to see more and more of Wojciech's dwarven army as the fight goes on. Infantry being their speciality, of course, it's going to be bad news for the defenders in melee, but provided they still have units of javelins and axe throwers and the like, they should be able to respond in kind. There are some Khazad reclaimers. Archers of Rivendell do still have a bit of ammunition, but what can they really shoot at from this angle? And I suppose they can go after the Snaga, but a unit of only 40, again, is that necessarily a bad thing for the defenders, for those Snaga to start absorbing ammunition in this vein. These Etmor's Troll Hunters are waiting for their opportunity to use their javelins on a good target. I mean, it's a bit of a catch-22 for the attackers here. They need to commit forward more, otherwise these half-orcs are actually going to do quite nicely on the front line. However, if they do send forward more, they're immediately going to incur the wrath of some of Rhudaur's javelins. You do have the beating of the defenders in melee though, so that may have to be what you do. Or use your own projectiles, I suppose, as Cardolan have been trying. Meanwhile, Warg skirmishers moving forward as well now. So more and more of the ambushing force in the trees starting to make themselves known. Dunland hunters pulling out their hatchets. Still those Arthedain missiles in the background. Another unit of Rhudaur axemen revealing themselves and surrounding this unit of dismounted Fornosterite knights. So it's not going to go too well for these Arthedain swordsmen. Short axe throwers. Dunland hunters are going to completely surround that unit now and probably cause them to rout. Whatever happened to those Rhudaur swordsmen? There they are. And this is the problem. WK, I think, they can sense blood here. There is actually a Cardolan unit over here as well, a unit of Cardolan pikemen, but Rhudaur senses the opportunity to completely nullify this avenue of attack and make sure that Arthedain doesn't play any part in the late game, which, considering they brought rangers to the table, it's definitely a worthwhile thing to try and get rid of. Cardolan was over here with a little bit of support as well, but is that going to be enough? Some basic units of Greenwave pikes, and now they've revealed themselves, of course. The Rhudaur marksmen are free to shoot at them. Not exactly the finest example of archer resistance there either. Riders of the Bruinen starting to shoot. Something needs to be done after all. But there's still these Rhudaur units in the backfield. I mean, yes, the Knights of Adumas will rip them apart, but just the fact that there is these units all the way back here, right in the guts of the Arthedain army at this point, it's a real concern. Dunedain Rangers and Troll Slayers will be very, very important. Rhudaur clansmen are moving across. You can see over here this attack has fallen apart because things were just a little bit too stretched for Arthedain, which wasn't entirely Froggy's fault. He had a lot of ground to cover when it was just him. And in the end, Rhudaur have done a really good job over here at rebuffing the probing Arthedain assaults. And will they continue to do a good job here in the middle? They are doing a pretty good job here in the middle still. Slowly but surely they will get forced backwards, but the attackers don't seem to be in any great rush, which, considering how long this battle is, shouldn't come as any great surprise, I suppose. Right, what's happening here? This would have to be, surely, the attackers' best way of getting into the settlement at this point. Another unit of Snaga skirmishers from Mr. Sneakman, making a nuisance of themselves, slowly but surely chipping away at the valuable elven and dwarven manpower that's being committed to try and force their way through here. The Spear Guard trying to hold back the dwarven infantry. Again, there's only so long they will be able to do so. But they are buying time. And I do like the way the defenders have conducted business here. For the attackers, it's been a bit of a puzzle. When the bandits revealing themselves again, popping out from hiding. Are they going to retreat? Might be the wise course of action. They do need to conserve some units like this, after all, for dealing with those really elite units later on, because they won't have the ability to go toe-to-toe with Dwarven elites as such. They've got the armor piercing from the Rhudaur bodyguards, but again, the quality, if it comes down to just pure might late on, you'd back the attackers every time. So they do need to be a little bit savvy here. They need to conserve some ranged units. Rhudaur marksmen, maybe not so much. It's impressive if you manage to use up all the ammunition from the Rhudaur marksmen, to be honest. Here are the dismounted Knights of Adumas, who are now getting completely surrounded. There's Dunland hunters, there's Rhudaur swordsmen. The horde descends. And here are more men of Rhudaur. Warns of the North are still alive, as are Dunedain Troll Slayers. The last bastion, really, of Arthedain resistance is back here. And at this point, Froggy needs to use this ammunition quickly. He needs to do some kind of damage. I mean, those Troll Slayers are going to do tons of damage. Here's some Dunland Hunter charging forward. Unflinchingly. they are engaging with the Wards of the North. They will, of course, lose very handily, but they're preventing those armour-piercing missiles from being used for the time being, and Rhudaur have got plenty of units that they can commit forward numbers-wise. The Warg skirmishers are still rooting around in the trees. The dwarves have actually come over here with more support, though, so this might be enough, honestly, to bail. Look at that, though. A huge Rhudaur force that was hidden on top of that mountain is now coming down here. The Dwarven relief force has managed to stop some of WK's initial forays in their tracks, but look at all of this. There is a lot going on over here. I think Arthedain, I think it might be all over for them. Dunland Rangers are firing, trying to do their thing. They're getting shot by what remains of the Rhudaur missiles. Dabaduba is over here. So this was where the vast majority of the Rhudaur force was all along, not deeper within the settlement. And so far it's paid dividends for them, but to be honest, the attackers could make this work out for them as well. If they go into the settlement now and take over the lower sections, they won't be able to retreat, will they? Actually, no, they could. They could go via way of the little docks over here. So there is a way for them to retreat, I take it back. If this lower section, if this over here was the only way to get into the settlement, they could have found themselves cut off, but that isn't a problem they will have to deal with, I don't think. Cardolan and Khazad are now pushing forward with a lot of aggression. Yeah, this unit of Ettenwall's Trolls, I think, was trying to retreat, or trying to shoot into the side of the Imladris force that moved down the hill, but in the end the only thing they found is a bunch of resistance to this. That will be the Arthedain general, surely. I mean, to be fair, the Imladris general is still over here as well, right in and amongst it, 41 of them. Here are the Rhudaur Axemen, trying their best against very strong dwarves. The armour piercing will help, but Rhudaur Axemen often need to be accompanied by a unit because of their own fragilities. Troll short axe throwers, there's all sorts going on in the trees as well. The dwarven reinforcements that were on the way to try and bail things out over here have made a little bit of an error in judgment, I think. They've spread themselves a little bit too thin, and they could end up losing some really important units as a result. Mithril Guard could end up getting shot up by the Troll Short Axe Throwers and pinned in place by the Rhudaur Axeman. The dwarves could still make this work for them, of course. Dwarven Miners against Rhudaur Axeman. I really like the aggression that the defenders have shown here. They've seen an opportunity. Whether it will actually prove to be the right call will depend on what the overall result of the battle is, but it's definitely the fun choice. Troll Short Axe Thrower is preventing the Riders of the Broiden from getting a full charge, but many of those riders did manage to connect with those Rhudaur Axemen, but this is a real problem. The Imladris General's in there, and heavy Axemen are good against cavalry and melee. As we head through the trees, the dwarves managing to deal with this pocket of Rhudaur resistance that was sent over here as more of a token effort, really, to hold the dwarves in place and preventing them from regrouping themselves, because the dwarves are a little bit all over the place. And that is pretty much the end of Arthedain, you'd have to say. I mean, well, the Rangers and the Wards of the North, if you're going to save a small element of your army, they've chosen the right ones, and the Troll Slayers. All of the highest tier of Dunedain that they could save, they have done, but terminal damage done to the Arthedain army outside of that. And the Elves and the Dwarves are going to have to try and defeat the scattered remains of what Rhudaur have over here. And I think Rhudaur now see that hunting season is over, and they are going to retreat what they can. This little force that's in the woods will ultimately be laid low. Rhudaur Axemen, armour piercing though they may be, the Mithril Guard are far beyond their pay grade. Rhudaur Axemen are pursuing something through the trees. Dunland Hunters are routing, Rhudaur Swordsmen are routing. I think it was the Dwarven Miners perhaps that they routed. There's still a fairly decent number of Rhudaur units in these trees, so it's going to be the sort of thing that the dwarves actually have to work at defeating. The Elven General needs to be really, really careful as well, with the presence of spears and heavy axemen absolutely everywhere in these trees. Very easy to lose track of your cavalry under tree cover like this. Warriors of Khazad are here, a little bit depleted perhaps. Actually, I'm not sure, 93? Yeah, they've lost a couple of soldiers in that unit, at least. Meanwhile, Cardolan pushing forward, the dwarves pushing forward. So they are trying to cut off the retreating Rhudaur units. One unit of Rhudaur swordsmen. They will be able to have the beating of Midhiriath archers in melee. There can be no doubt about that. They should be able to get most of this stuff gone though, but perhaps they will get cut off. This fight continues to twist and turn. Meanwhile, is there still... we came here just in time to see the men of Cardolan celebrate the downfall of that unit of Ettenmoor's troll hunters. And slowly but surely we're also going to start to see the a more classic siege start to take shape as the defenders get back into their defensive positions within the settlement, and they will now have the terrain advantage completely and utterly. Therefore, Baneguard a little bit further back. Trollshort axe throwers are still here, but they're getting engaged in melee, which is a little bit of a shame, but yeah, at this point it's just a matter of trying to scour these final remaining wild men from the trees. To be fair, these Mithril Guard have taken a bit of damage. I assume that there were a few volleys from the Trollshore axe throwers that helped with that, but fair play to the Rhudaur axemen. They weren't completely demolished in quick order, and the Mithril Guard have been damaged for later, which again will potentially play its part. Froggy can also still play his part. Wards of the North pulling out their longswords. Dunland captains also very similar in style to the Wards of the North. I mean, they're going to carve their way through the Rhudaur clansmen that didn't quite make it back in time, which again is a shame. A good unit for helping to hold the line. The Starbat Warhammers over here as well, so Cardolan really deploying the big guns to make sure Rhudaur can't retreat any more defenders to get back into shape. The feat seems certain, only a military genius could win this battle. Well, quite. Midhiriath men-at-arms are also going to get into position to surround these fighting men. It will do a bit of damage to the elites of Cardolan as well though, so every cloud has a silver lining. Midhiriath men-at-arms trying to get into the backs of those Rhudaur marksmen as they try to retreat, but close proximity of Rhudaur swordsmen and Dunland veterans. Cardolan are going to need more than just one single unit of men-at-arms if they are going to make an impact over here, especially with Baneguard nearby. More of an organised defensive position they can take up as well. Ettenmoor's troll hunters are there. Imladris still haven't moved down from the hill just yet. Perhaps they are waiting for all their allies to get into place, because they have a more direct route to the upper echelon of the settlement. So if they attack too prematurely, they could find themselves in pretty hot water. All of these Dunland, I mean, yeah, Rhudaur swordsmen, broken, fighting to the death. Tharbad Warhammers taking a few losses, but nothing too substantial. Cardolan still have their own crossbows, of course, which can be used to potentially devastating effect later. And just having a little look around here, Rhudaur have been expelled from this area. Still some more skirmishers from Inarius roaming around in this part of the field, and there isn't a huge force left. Arthedain do still have a few. The Dwarven Relief Force, what remains of the Dwarven Relief Force anyway, is there. And potentially they're going to go back to the middle as well. With some routing units of Rhudaur clansmen. Warriors of Khazad, so yeah, the dwarves marching their way inwards. And it's this section over by the docks which is now showing action. I really like this because so much of the map is being used. A lot of times in scenarios like this where people put a lot of effort into the map, a lot of it doesn't tend to get used. But here we've seen pretty much everything. We've seen the mountains in front of the settlement get used. We've seen the river head and the pond, as I termed it, as well as the trees, this more open section. We're seeing the docks get used. We'll also see the centre of the settlement get used. And of course the final stand, which accounts for pretty much everything. Actually moving towards the enemy once again, so again, more of an aggressive move here from the defenders. Rhudaur swordsmen and Dunland veterans eager to get into melee. I don't know if these Rhudaur marksmen still have ammunition. I would assume not, because they were so active in the other fight, pulling out their hand axes. And they're going to try and contribute in melee somewhat, alongside their fellow man. Do with some range support, I would have to say. Rhudaur marksmen, troll hunters. Perhaps they're waiting for more elite units to move forward, although I would say that you probably want to be focusing down those gatekeepers. Otherwise they could prove to be a real problem as the battle wears on. Fire. Yeah, Rhudaur axemen on their way down. Javelins firing into, once again, both sides taking a real beating from the opposition's skirmishers. Those Rhudaur axemen will surely be the next target for some kind of projectiles. Though perhaps not. Javelins, not devastating volleys, but enough that the Minhiriath men-at-arms are really starting to struggle. Those axemen are going to get ready as well to try and pitch in. So no warriors getting into place. This is the Sneak Man setting up a defence in case Imladris do decide to be very, very aggressive. There's Speed as a war tank for Roger and Javelin, so you can see, yes, they've already got their final defence all planned out. I think as well, this is the only way up here, is it not? Yeah, there's only one route up to the final stand, so that will be one of the defenders' most effective tools. There is another little final stand over here as well. Yeah, this really does remind me of Bersergath. I wonder if it was used as a template, actually. Because at least the settlement area has got a very similar vibe going for it. Of course, the outer reaches are completely different, but I say completely different. No, that gap is very, very similar. So I would have to ask Froggy about that. I do wonder if he took Bersergath as a template and then edited it. I have to say I prefer this version, although that may just be because I've seen Bersergath so often. Walk skirmishers. Managing to charge into the rear there. I don't know how they were allowed to do that, but they're going to be in here causing a nuisance. They will probably end up paying the ultimate price for this, but they will not die in vain. They will at least be useful. Surely they'll meet their demise at the hands of those Dunland captains that they're in there with. They managed to charge in and again provide a little bit of respite for the fights on the front line. Axe throwers being utilised. Once again, doing damage. Falling upon the men of Cardolan like rain. Bandits are also going to get into position to use those jabbies. Are they going to move back here, Rhudaur? Perhaps cutting their losses and getting into a more advantageous position, although the skirmishers have already done a pretty good job for themselves. The dwarves are over here, not quite ready to move up through the middle of the settlement just yet. They do need to be a little bit careful here, the attackers, because Cardolan could very well end up burning themselves out as well on this approach, and that would leave both of the human attackers a little bit thin on the ground. And then it will be entirely up to the dwarves and the elves, as we're at more or less the halfway point of the battle. And it is very even. Very, very even. The attackers 2% behind as it stands, but very often we see the attackers start to pull it back later on, albeit this is a 4v4. Again, these Dunland captains, victory seems certain. Trading quite nicely with the Rhudaur axemen, especially considering there are archers coming in, but a full javelin volley there. Killing off a few of those Dunland captains. That's exactly the sort of support that your infantry is going to need if you're playing as the defenders here. Archers have done 32 of them. Again, very, very token support that. Cardolan themselves also need to, well, Cardolan need to help themselves as well, though. They can't afford to just let one unit of Dunland captains take all of the heat and expect that to go well. Let's see here. Arthedain Berserkers are on the way over. Witch Realm Enslavers, Axe Throwers. I mean, it's a statement of intent here from Rhudaur. They're not just going to allow Cardolan to walk in. And as a result, I do think that the ball is in Imladris and Khazad's court. They need to do something here, because Cardolan are not going to make too much in the way of progress. I think the time has come to start putting a little bit of extra pressure on somewhere else at least. Maybe to try and go through the middle here. It's Bane Guard, but again, infantry-wise, you're always going to have the beating of them. It's just where you choose to engage, trying to minimise the potential of those Dunland and Rhudaur javelins from getting into a good position to shoot you. Maybe shoot is the wrong word for a javelin. Well, back into their defensive shape here. Rhudaur swordsmen and Dunland veterans taking quite a bit of damage, but effectively rebuffing the Cardolan assault's never a good idea when your attack completely stalls. It's never a good thing to see when your attack completely stalls, and you have to start again from your beginnings. And now Rhudaur once again charging forward, lurching forward to engage the Minhiriath spearmen. It's going to take more numbers than Rhudaur currently have on the front line, I think, but if they do send forward something like the Rhudaur Axeman, not the sort of thing Minhiriath spears are going to enjoy fighting. Elsewhere, all kinds of Khazad are still here. There's only that one unit though. Could maybe counter-attack here. Meanwhile, still not a great deal of movement happening. The dwarves are over here now. Even if they're just putting on some pressure from range, that would be something, but at the moment it does seem like it's all on Cardolan to make something happen, and they are struggling a little bit to make up ground quickly. Some crossbow bolts finding their way into the defenders now though. Trying to cut through those Rhudaur Axemen before they have too much of an impact on those spearmen. And here we can see some out of ammunition axe throwers as well. They're not that good in melee, to be fair, but again, it's just more bodies that Cardolan are going to have to try and cut their way through, and they've struggled to do so far. Some bandits ready to reinforce, and there is of course those two bodyguard tier units as well, which in the event of a panic can always be sent in quickly. Khazad in planes. Khazad, I think, do need to take on a little bit of responsibility as well. Something like the Khazad Reclaimers could be really, really useful in this situation, honestly. Because you could really punch a hole through the defender's front line pretty fast. Yes, you're going to be putting them into harm's way, but like I said, they're going to be in harm's way no matter what. The time has come, I think. Again, slowly but surely, Imladris and Khazad over here are thinking about some sort of attack. I would really recommend against sending in a single unit of Dunlanding veterans against them. I think he's just repositioning them to get into a more all-encompassing stance on that choke point. He's also got some Bane Guard. More Bane Guard. They will be very, very necessary if they're going to hope to do any sort of damage against the elves and the dwarves as they move forward there. Ooh. This is of course something that Rhudaur do also bring to the table. Rangers, Arthedain Rangers, going to be moving forwards to maybe get some really nice shots into Cardolan blobs, maybe. Cardolan on sword. They are ammunition? I don't think they are. I haven't seen them use their ammo as of yet, but I could be very much mistaken on that count. A very tough unit of spears, but maybe something a little bit more damaging is required. The Legion Bodyguard were over here, and indeed there they are. They're the Meteor Guard, 4th Legion Shield Guard, so they're sending over some decent stuff here. Wounds in the North are still in close attendance. They've got the tools, it's just whether they want to use them or not. More arrows or projectiles of some sort being used, and the Rhudaur Axeman will very much not enjoy that. Bandits going to be committed to melee as well. Just again, more bodies on the front line. Another obstacle for Cardolan to have to overcome. Bandits not the best in melee, of course, but very much unlike the Thieves of Tharbad. And again, Rhudaur, a statement of intent. Witch Realm Enslavers heading for the front line, and they will dominate against Minhiriath units with those tridents of theirs. Arthedain Berserkers, I don't think they've used up their ammunition yet, and yet they are getting into melee, which is an interesting choice. Meanwhile, finally, some pressure being put on elsewhere. It's about time too. Norotino warriors and warriors of Khazad getting into the fight against Dunlanding veterans, who will of course struggle against this level of opposition, but they will do their best. They'll be backed up by their half-orc companions. This I think is going to be the key moment of the fight. If Imladris and Khazad can seize momentum from the defenders here and start really getting them on the back foot, assisting Cardolan in getting up their choke point as well, I don't know if the defenders will then have enough quality to stem the tide. If, however, the defenders can continue to do good damage here with stuff like their bandits and Snaga skirmishers, peel away at the attacking manpower, then it could end up going really quite poorly for the attackers, and they could end up bouncing off the defensive line. Khazad Spearmen, Khazad Reclaimers. What else have we? Dunland Ettenmoor's Trollans. I was thinking the Troll Slayers then, who are still on the field somewhere. Could yet prove to be an important unit going forward. Bandits, which Enslavers, Bouncer Forces evenly matched, which I find surprising. Is that because of support from crossbows, perhaps? No, they're not firing. Well, I mean, this, more than ever, is the time to use the Khazad Reclaimers. When the Witch Realm Enslavers are on the front line, you want to do some damage there. Oof. That, I think. Yeah, Attenmoor's Troll Hunters, so some more serious javelins. Arthedain Rangers, firing in, doing the business against the Dunland Rangers. There are the Orc Hunters. Can those Khazad Reclaimers get into a good position to fire? They will need to, because I think the Arthedain Berserkers were retreated. Indeed they were. They should still have their ammunition, so that's wise. But yeah, those Witch Realm Enslavers are going to carve their way through what the attackers have here. So, are they suffering the same sort of fate over here? Elder and Spearmen are actually wavering as a result of javelins. That's surprising. This may be why. Spears of Orthanc are in a position where they could be shooting. Indeed they are. And I think now is the time. When you're starting to see upper tier Elder Runway units, that is a good target for your crossbows to be going after. And it means that the defenders are continuing to hold on to that position. And those crossbows, they do have to be careful as well of the Iron Watch of Miramir, let's not forget, which Khazad still have somewhere. And if they have nothing to counteract that in the late game, it could be pretty grisly for the defenders. Khazad Reclaimers trying to give the defenders a taste of their own medicine, using throwing projectiles to force an opening, but they are getting shot up by the crossbowmen. Worthwhile target because they're pretty good in melee as well, and they do represent a threat to all of those half-orcs on the front line at range. Serious threat. They're going to try and go up the middle as well. I mean, they could at least open up with their archers, I suppose. Do they want to conserve that? I'm not sure. Half-Guard of Amon Sul is still there. The Enslavers and the Bandits continuing to do their thing. I think there's still a few Axemen as well, which is surprising in its own way. 4th Legion Shield Guard moving in. Only 28 of them, but it's better than nothing. Arthedain Berserkers could make their presence felt. I mean, Arthedain Berserkers could do quite a lot of damage to something like the Half-Guard of Amon Sul. 69 Minhiriath Spears, all bloodied up. On the way in as well. Khazad Reclaimers. Trollshore Axe Throwers moving into position from Inarius. The Dunlanders in place. Minotaur Roman Gatekeepers, I think. Just letting the Berserkers know that they're not going to be able to move through here free of charge. Sharpshooters. Continuing to put pressure on from range. I mean, eventually, surely the attackers are going to be able to force their way through here. Sharpshooters getting into melee. Again, just more and more pressure. Those enslavers will rack up an impressive kill count, but they won't be able to stand indefinitely. Would be my assumption. Here are the axe throwers. 53 troll hunters. Fine margins could be what this comes down to in the end, so something like 53 troll hunters is worth preserving. Still projectiles coming in, and still Imladris and Khazad suffering as a result of it. Yes, they've got the superior troops in melee, but the half-orcs are doing a decent enough job of holding the front line for all of the other units to really start doing the business. Rhudaur marksmen, axe throwers, all doing what they can. The river wards suffering under the weight of all of these projectiles. But they needed to do something, the elves and the dwarves. Like, these defenders weren't going anywhere, they needed to move in eventually. The God Helene could move forward. They're just going to have to hope they run out of effective ammunition before stuff like the Iron Watch and the God Helene can move forward to claim the ranged advantage for the attackers, and then hope also that they still have enough left for them in melee that they can still make something happen there. Orc hunters firing into the Atomor's troll hunters, but, as I said, by Rhudaur standards, they're pretty well armoured, so they can withstand it better than most of the other Northmen. Minotaur Rom-men, gatekeepers. And here are the Mithril Guard, having already done the business against Rhudaur in the trees. They're now moving in here as well. Rhudaur Berserkers are in the way, and to be fair, Rhudaur Berserkers can stand up to them here. More than double the man count, and a bit of armour piercing to boot. Maybe that will be enough. Some Atomor's Trollhunters have been committed to melee over here as well, 53 of them. There's a Rhudaur general, or possibly a Dunland general. No, that's a Rhudaur one. They of course use the same general model. Axe throwers are in place again. They're going after the Reclaimers, which is a good choice of target. They are unshielded. And they are also in full view, the Trollshaw axe throwers, so definitely worth getting rid of them if you're able. Wojciech now notices the horrible fate that is befalling them, and he's going to try and get them out of there. Orc Hunters continuing to fire, but their DPS is not really up to the task of making anything happen quickly. Another unit of Dunlanding veterans is on the front line, so continuing to hold this front line are the defenders, seeing that it is still potentially fertile grounds to make gains in this battle. Still not really able to do anything with those two units. 2 units is not going to be enough to make anything substantial happen. Not a lot of range support forthcoming now, and as a result, the Groin and River Wards are starting to do their thing here against the half-orcs. These bandits do still have ammunition though, I believe. They've got their javelins ready. Perhaps just waiting for a more substantial blob to form first. Going to commit forward 126 Rhudaur marksmen just to plug the gap for a little bit longer. Is this where the lack of quality in a lot of the defending infantry, is this where that's going to come home to roost? Arthedain Rangers are on the way over here though. Still, their ranged support is the key. Still got units here in the middle as well. They do need to be a little bit careful, because they will either need to go that way to retreat or up this way, and if Cardolan do make a breakthrough, that could cause a lot of these units to become cut off. An evenly matched fight. Hearthguard of Amon-Sul being committed to melee now. Again, more of a defensive powerhouse when it comes to their abilities in melee more than anything else. Only 17 Arthedain Berserkers left, but I'm not seeing much in the way of Mithril Guard, so they were able to overcome that challenge unless they were retreated. No, they weren't. So they have managed to deal with that. Witch-Ram enslavers are still alive as well. 28 of them. They weren't directly against quite as dangerous an opponent as the Arthedain Berserkers, but they're still in here, still doing their thing. Orc Hunters of Khazad are now being committed. Horns of Tingorthad are going to be an important unit, I think. because they are a strong unit of pikes, and at this stage in the game, having something like a pike unit available can be really, really important for gaining the upper hand in these kind of fights. Second unit of Witcher and Slavers over here as well, finishing off the gatekeepers. Troll Hunters, once again, in much the same way as they did against Arthedain, they clearly smell blood against Cardolan and want to finish them off because they're not letting up with the reinforcements they're sending over here. They are running out of units that they can actually comfortably send over there. Frontline Berserkers as well, so they're committing their elites. This means it's going to be elites that will be damaged by the time they come to fighting the dwarves. Now this could be vital. The Iron Watch of Mirrormere, how effectively can they be utilised? We'll have to wait and see on that one. 3rd Legion Infantry with the armour upgrade now being committed to melee as well. Again, quality of infantry is never going to be the attacker's problem, as I've said several times. I mean, there is a bit of arm piercing from the Rhudaur axemen, but they're dropping like flies in the face of this force. Trollshaw axe throwers also moving in. There are the Snaga. They are firing away now at practically point blank, which is an interesting choice, but they did manage to do really serious damage, and in fact they routed all of those units with that. So actually that was worthwhile. And they're also going to get slaughtered as they rout as well by the guards of Khazad on the way through. So actually that was a big amount of... that was over 200 men that were effectively removed from the battle almost instantaneously, so that was very, very good for the attackers. They need more of that. The 2nd unit of Arthedain Berserkers is now over here. And there are ones to the north. I mean, yeah, fair enough. The armour piercing itself is not terribly useful against the Arthedain Berserkers, but the high damage, they're a multiple HP unit shooting them from the front. They've got their shields up, but they are going to take losses here, and again, another good catch. The attackers starting to find some pressure points, which they will need more of. Forward come the Attenmore's Troll Hunters and the Arthedain Berserkers now, seeing that they can't just allow the Wardens of the North to continue to shoot as they are. They are going to start... Actually, no, they're going to try and surround that front line. I'm not sure that's the right call. I think silencing this unit is more important, or at the very least, not turning your back on the Troll Slayers, because those Attenmore's Troll Hunters are going to get dominated by a unit like the Troll Slayers. A really, really good axeman in melee. Defeat is a distinct possibility. Let's have a look over here. There goes one of the defending generals. Rhudaur and Dunland, of course, not immune to morale shocks by any means. Again, the Iron Watch of Mirrormere are doing a ton of damage there to a blob of defending infantry. Do they have an answer to this? I mean, they didn't manage to rout off the units this time. That was a less devastating volley, but still, this is a problem. A real problem. 8 Dunland veterans are routing. Just one volley enough. Are they going to retreat at this juncture? Honestly, if I were the defenders, I would probably do so. And they're moving forward now, though. Over here as well. Guards of Khazad. They will be really, really good against half-orc spear guard. But are they getting shot by crossbows? I believe they are. That's going to be bad for the guards of Khazad. Good amount of damage being done. German slavers are on the front lines still. 2nd unit from Dabaduba, but again, another Dwarven bodyguard unit is over here, the Legion bodyguard this time. Quality starting to be a little bit more forthcoming. The Wardens of the North committing themselves to melee. Is this finally where the defence over here succumbs? Just about the attackers will be able to get through here, because they don't have anything else other than this unit of 24 reclaimers that they could commit at this point. Everything else has already been thrown in. So again, could be fine margins here, but it is looking like the attackers could force their way through. Ones to the north, 38 Troll Slayers. Again, they have taken damage throughout the course of the battle, all of these more elite units, but they still have a lot to give. There goes the Dwarven General, at the hands of the Enslavers. But needs must. They need to be aggressive at this point, the attackers. And they are pushing further forward. The God Helene using their Silver Thorns. Ferodrum Javelins being left behind. Dabaduba probably too focused on what's happening over on the other side, and to lose a unit of Ferodrum Javelins is a serious loss as well. And the God Helene continuing to do their thing. The Elder Enway will tear them a new one in melee as well. Second HP or no, which to be fair, given the amount of arrow fire they're taking, probably not going to be coming into is not going to be factored in as much. Spears of Orthanc firing away. Do we have? They're going to continue to fall back, possibly to the Longhouse at the top of the hill. Arthedain Rangers also moving back. Do they have enough left at this point, the defenders? I'm not sure. I think those Iron Watch volleys have really... they took away a lot of units that would have been really, really quite useful. Those Woodland Slavers are going to try and get away, as are the Arthedain Berserkers, but I'm not sure they're going to be able to. I think they're going to be cut off. They are going to slip through the net over here, which will, of course, finally mean the attackers are victorious over here. Ones in the north, 29 of them remain. Taking even more damage. They're going to finish off this one unit of Troll Short Axe Throwers, which has been left behind. See here. And over here, what do the elves and dwarves have left? They'd still have the Iron Watch. I keep saying that if you have a unit of pikes for the late game, it can be so good, and the Imladris sentries among pikes have very few that can compare, so that could be absolutely vital. I think what we're going to do here, honestly, I mean, yeah, you can see they tried to escape here. Maybe a little bit of an overcommitment from their elite units to try and finish off the assault by way of Cardolan. I mean, Cardolan don't really have much left other than the unit of pikes, but again, much like the assault earlier on that we saw, it was effective, but it wasn't quite effective enough for what it needed to be, I don't think. All of this could end up being very, very vital. There really isn't much left now. So let's see. Well, there's a bit of ranged support. What do they still have available to them? That one unit of Spears of Orthanc, some Javelins. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that they could be the difference maker here. They've got Javelins, they've got Arthedain Rangers. So yeah, in fact, most of what they have left is ranged units, one way or the other. So it could be that they have to do most of their damage up front before the attacking infantry reaches them. Still 6 Witch Realm Enslavers trying to do their thing. Going axe to axe now with the Troll Slayers. As Froggy moves in to try and claim his revenge on the men of Rhudaur for how he suffered in the earlier stages of the game. Khazad Reclaimers. There's not much left over here for the attackers, as has been said previously, but what do we have here? Is there something up here for the defenders? No, it's just the routing units. They're not going to use this. They are going to use the other final stand, and the elves are going to get themselves into position. They can of course skirmish with the enemy first and foremost with stuff like their God Heli and their archers. I think actually like time for ×2 speed as a result of this. Because really we're just waiting for Rhudaur to be finished over here, and then the attackers will need to maneuver themselves into position to start trying to tackle the final stand. In fact, it's ×6 speed this. A time for ×6 speed. There's no real point in making a cut here because it won't be a long enough one for it to be worthwhile. But do the attackers have a little bit too much left? Still quite a long way to go in this fight, relatively speaking. Not even into the final 10,000 frames, and yet this is, technically speaking, the final stand. Spears of Orthanc. They are going to start firing right now into the Elder Runaway Archers, who, to be fair, are pretty good in melee as well, but I'm not sure whether that's the best choice. For me, the God Heli are much more important because they're even better in melee and they're even more dangerous at range. Just having a look here, I mean, the attackers have taken the lead by 1%. Is that going to be insurmountable for the defenders, given what they're faced with? I think the answer is probably yes, but stranger things have happened, and there is also they can retreat even further back here to the stone circle at the back. The Poundland version of Stonehenge. And they're taking a lot of damage here, the Spears of Orthanc, and this is the problem. The attackers do still have ranged units available to them at long range with their archers. Worryingly, the Iron Watch is still around. I don't know how much ammunition they have left necessarily. They're not a unit that carries tons and tons of volleys in their pockets. God Halim are now hiding. They're just going to allow the Elder Runaway Archers, I guess, to take the punishment. Yeah, we're going to have to go up to ×6 speed. Eventually the attackers will need to move in. I think perhaps what they are just waiting for is to get all of their units up here first. Spears of Orthanc continue to fire. Is it efficient now? Spears of Orthanc, probably the most important unit the defenders still have left because of their utility in melee as well. They're the only unit really which is going to be able to withstand the punishment that's going to be coming their way in melee. Slayers are just hovering around as well. Admiral's Troll Hunters in position. They may be out of ammunition. No, possibly not. It's a little bit bizarre. We're on the cusp. Ah, the Troll Slayers reveal themselves. And now once again the God Heli with another volley from their Silverthorns thudding into the Troll Hunters. Not killing a great many of them, but just letting the defenders know that, you know, you're in there. If you come out, we're going to start shooting you with everything we have. Bandits. Again, not worth coming up with ×6 speed for this really. The Troll Slayers just charging in, somewhat suicidally. Of course, they can, I don't know, they could kill off quite a few of these bandits, but ultimately they should fall. There just isn't enough of them to be effective in that sense. Bandits, Troll Slayers, I mean, the Arthedain Rangers could be key, but I just don't know if they're going to have the time to lay down as many volleys as they will need to turn things in the favour of the defenders. Is this it? Yes, it is. We are now into the final 10,000 frames, and this is where things are going to get spicy again. Wardens of the North and Orc Guns of Khazad moving forward. And now this combination most certainly will be able to deal with the bandits in the numbers that they're in. 20 Troll Short Axe Throwers, which at this point, every bit of ammunition they have is going to need to be used effectively. Admiral's Troll Hunters getting into position. The real question here is, do the defenders have what it takes to stop the attackers from just marching through them through sheer strength at arms? Admiral's Troll Hunters will do a lot of damage. They will undoubtedly be targeting stuff like the Elder Enway, perhaps the Wardens of Tyr and Gorthard as well. Spears of Orthanc will be continuing to fire. I'm a little bit surprised they're not going forward with a little bit more, but perhaps they are trying to stretch out the damage that's being done by all of these javelins. Cardolan Rangers. And the Animals Troll Hunters as well. Archers still firing away. I'm a little bit confused as to why they weren't doing that previously, to be fair. They were just standing there and taking the hits, but all kinds of Khazad are routing as a result of all the damage that they've been taking. Elder Runaway Swordmasters struggling as a result of all of the range support that is coming their way. Of course, in pure melee against bandits, Elder Runaway Swordmasters are going to have a relatively easy time. They're trying to push through here and they're trying to interrupt the axe throwers. This is why I'm surprised they're not coming forward with everything they have all at once, because they should be able to do terminal damage to the front line that's in the way, and then they can start pouring forwards and interrupting multiple skirmishes at once. So I'm a little bit confused as to why the attackers have decided to try and handle things in this manner. They don't really have the numbers left to afford this kind of thing. I think the attackers, if they end up losing this, I'll have to say that they've thrown it away for themselves. Because they had the defenders, really. They just needed to commit all of their units in a more substantial blob. I mean, they should still be fine from a melee perspective. The Elder Runaway Swordmasters still fighting the good fight here. Still Spears of Orthanc now actually getting their spears out. Though that's not a spear, really, is it? Troll Hunters are there, still just waiting with their javelins. Is that Froggy's army? No, I think it's actually Cardolan. Cardolan technically the first attacker to fall. Elder Runaway Archers are still there. Still, the crossbows. Imladris sentries could still be important. Inarius' Spears of Orthanc. Perhaps thinking about getting into melee just to try and help shore things up. They will need that, of course. The God Hellim are now in melee. A very strong unit at doing such things they are. Is that the Iron Watch? I would assume yes. And moving forward, they only went for one volley. 4th Legion Shield Guard routing. Have they been their own worst enemy here? I do wonder. Khazad Reclaimers moving forward, 24 of them only though. If they'd have moved forward all in one big go, yes, they would have taken a lot of damage at the hands of the javelins still, but the Iron Watch could have come forward in support. There's only so many targets that the defenders could shoot. And ultimately they didn't have enough infantry, I think, to slow you down. Yeah, and the defenders have taken the lead again. The announcer seems to think that the attackers are going to win, but of course that comes down to the fact that they've got the stronger units in melee left, but the missiles, that could be the issue. Imladris sentries though, that is a tough target to bring down. Guards of Khazad, there are the Iron Watch. I mean, this could still prove to be the ultimate leveler, really, the Iron Watch. They're trying to go after these units in behind. There's still javelins. Doing tons of damage there to the Imladris sentries. Cardolan Rangers also ripping right along the line. Spears of Orthanc doing the same. The Dwarves and Elves, can they see this through? It has been a battle of who's been able to use their ranged units the best, really. And the attackers even had moments earlier in the fight where they had the high ground. So it has been a very dynamic fight from that perspective. Those Spears of Orthanc getting a nasty volley, courtesy of the Iron Watch. The Snaga Skirmishers still doing their thing. I'd probably move them a little bit closer at this point, because it really is quite fine margins, but I think this is it. I think the defenders are going to be victorious here. Unless there's a unit that I'm simply not seeing. 24 Elder Runaway Archers. mean, unless the Iron Watch of Mirrormere can get some really telling blows now. Because, yes, the Guards of Khazad are really strong, but the Spears of Orthanc are still here. They're a very capable unit in melee themselves. They still have ranger ammunition, the defenders. And now the Iron Watch have been engaged in melee, so they have been silenced. Possibly for the duration of the battle. Still trying to do some damage there with the Elven Way Archers. Do they have anything else left? I don't believe they do, otherwise it would be more immediately apparent. Snaga skirmishers moving in. Those rangers are taking a lot of damage at the hands of the Elder Way Archers, but it's much more important for them to try and bring down these elite Dwarven warriors. Yeah, and they have now moved their javelins into a better position to do so. The mightiest of dwarves being laid low by the lowliest of Snaga. We'd love to see it. Spears of Orthanc. Still capable of doing something in melee, perhaps. It's going to be close, this. I kind of feel as though the defenders deserve the victory, though. Have they run out of javelins? That would be interesting. They still a lot of Snaga for these dwarves to try and cut their way through. Like I said earlier on, fine margins could be what it ultimately comes down to, and we could be seeing that made manifest here. The final Eldarenway Swordmasters are being dealt with. Spears of Orthanc are ultimately losing to the Iron Watch, but this is definitely worthwhile because they need to keep the Iron Watch silent. And I think the dwarves know that. They're really trying to get their Iron Watch into a position where they can shoot, but Dunland need to prevent them from doing that. At all costs. Javelins being utilised, more dwarves fall. Spears of Orthanc should be able to tidy up what's left of this. You can see the Legion Bodyguard are now moving down, I think, to try and deal with the other unit of Spears of Orthanc to finally, once and for all, free up the Iron Watch. The Iron Watch is trying to go after the healthier... There goes the Elven General, trying to go after the healthier Spear of Orthanc. 7 Arthedain Rangers. Very, very good fight this. It's come down to very, very narrow margins. One unit of Snaga skirmishers, 145 of them, they still have ammunition. There are the Iron Watch. They should probably be the target. The Iron Watch are decent in melee after all. I mean, they're not amazing, but they're still a multiple HP block of armour, which at this point could be enough. The ultimate twist being that it could be the Iron Watch that win the battle for the attackers, but in melee more so than with their projectiles. Legion Bodyguards still fighting the good fight against those Spears of Orthanc. There's still 17 Eldarenway Archers. They're going to try and rout the enemy off. The Spears of Orthanc chasing down the Iron Watch, the Snaga. Quicker than the dwarves, and we will see the very final stand used in a roundabout kind of way. What a fight, though. I'm always a little bit skeptical about these really long fights because very often it can end up being quite end up being overly grindy. That has not been the case here, though. This fight has had a bit of everything, and there hasn't really been the need for many cuts or many fast forwards. So a very, very enjoyable one. Iron Watch and Mirrormere turning around. Spears of Orthanc 10. The Iron Watch moving back again. I'm not sure, you know. I don't think there's enough Spears of Orthanc left to give the Snaga the cover they need to lay down the punishment that's required. I think that was the last of the Arthedain Rangers as well, was it not? Meaning the Eldarenway Archers are also free to move this way. And the attackers, just about on the back of some of their really high quality units at the end, I think are going to be able to see themselves over the line. Because yes, it's 140 Snaga, but they're really bad in melee. And 29 Iron Watch and 16 Eldarenway Archers should be enough to deal with them. First and foremost, however, they do need to get these Spears of Orthanc out of the way. And there is a Dunlanding general. Javelins point blank into those Legion bodyguard. Look at the amount of punishment they're taking, and yet shrugging off so much of it. Taking hits from the Eldraenway archers as well, but the more javelins they can get down range, the more chance they stand at winning this fight, the defenders. But again, morale of the Snaga is going to prove to be an issue as well. They are shaken. Morale is something that the dwarves, stout of heart, never really have to worry about. They are going to stick around in melee for longer than I thought they would. I mean, even still, there's longer left in this fight than you would think to look at it. Seems so. And they're dropping like flies, and they're not really going to be able to have much of a response. There's a couple of Spears of Orthanc left, which will chip away, but it ain't going to be enough, I don't think. What a fight it's been, though. 99% to 99%. It's going to be one of those where you can very easily count the amount of units that are left on the field by the end. There is the general. What is Mr. Sneakman doing? Is he going to try and leave with his general? Leave the Snaga to their fate? And as the general leaves the area, Snaga are actually pointing the wrong way, most of them, so they're not fighting back, technically speaking. What are they doing? The Ironwatch and Mirrormere don't want to leave this area. They want to make sure that the Snaga fall, if they have any ammunition left at all. Okay, well, he's just running away with his general, so it's just a bit of tomfoolery here at the end. This, however, yeah, there they go. So it is just a case of chasing the general down, I suppose. They're going to try and shoot it. Will they be successful? And there he goes, shot in the back, disgraced as he tried to run from the field. And that is that. The end of the battle. And what a battle it was. 16-23. That's all that remains.
It could have been we that were slain and defeated on the field, but fate has been kind and delivered us victory.
A very good battle it was. Another really good scenario that's been made here, so big thank you to Froggy for making it. Big thank you to Langer for sharing it with me as well. Really good settlement this. I would be interested to hear from him if he did use Versagath as the basis for this, because there's too many similarities for me to think that he didn't. But yeah, really, really good this one. And I think, as I said, I think the defenders played well, but I wouldn't have been too displeased if either of the teams won in the end, because I think neither team played badly. There was a lot of good stuff. I have a slight soft spot for the way the attackers played, because they were quite aggressive at certain points throughout the battle, which I always like from defenders, because it makes for more interesting battles all the time. And yeah, a good battle indeed. Let's see what did the damage for the Imladris players' army. Langer. Several units getting over 100, of course. One unit of Imladris sentries getting 0, so the defenders did a very good job at diffusing that situation. God Helene, Eldraenway archers, Norotino warriors. Did anything. Getting over 200 on the Eldraenway swordmasters, which is impressive. Over 300 on a unit of archers of Rivendell. Basic archers like this can often fill their boots in terms of kills in battles like this. And the Riders of the Broinen racking up good kill counts for themselves as well, so he used his horse archers well in a map that it's not necessarily the easiest to use your horse archers on. But yeah, really, really good, I think, this one. Big thanks to all the players, Langer for sending it to me, and Froggy for making the scenario once again. I'll keep the end of this one short and sweet because the channel update has already dropped at this point, so no need to waffle on about that in the post-game screen anymore. The next battle will possibly be a Moria one. It kind of depends on if I have the time to record that one, because Moria always is a long battle. If not, then I do have a few others that I could do anyway. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.